Hey there everybody, welcome back to Fantasy Inc. My name is Wyeth, and today we are talking about the series Cradle. It just wrapped up with 10 books, and we're going to do a series review. Let's do this. For those of you who haven't heard anything about this series, Cradle is a book series based on a young man named Lindon who comes from a village called Sacred Valley. In this village, there are specific aptitudes to certain types of magic, and Lindon learns that he has no specific aptitude for any of them. He is an unsouled and is very much looked down upon by the rest of his village. Throughout the first book, you learn that the planet that Lindon is on is called Cradle, and Will Wright's ability to give life to the world really comes across in the pages. The book takes you in many different directions across the universe, and we get this dichotomy of problems happening outside of the world called Cradle and inside. And Will Wright does a really good job balancing between the two. When it comes to the magic system, it is not groundbreaking, but it still very much has its own individualized touch on it. Magic itself is referred to as Madra, and practitioners of the Madra arts have cores inside their being where this Madra is stored, and paths that they can go down, really focusing on specific uses for said Madra. Whether that be a swordsman has the ability to really increase their sword art Madra, or practitioner of shadow Madra has the ability to slip into shadows or utilize them in various other ways. Where the series goes, I'm not going to go into, but I will say the main characters that we focus on definitely become OP as the series goes on. Obviously, throughout the books, which there's 10 of, they're going to be facing more and more difficult foes, but at the same time, you're not losing interest because the stakes are only getting higher, and you as a reader are just on the edge of your seat while listening or reading these books. There's definitely different levels that characters can progress to. You're not being bogged down with the numbers, so don't worry about that. It's mainly with titles, whether they be Monarch, Sage, Archlord, Overlord, and there is a definite well done progression throughout the series, so it's not done too quickly, but at the same time, it's also not rushed. So that's one of my pros for the series in general. When it comes to characters in this book, they are fleshed out. Will Wright did a phenomenal job for giving backstory and giving each character who appears their own goals and ambitions. Whereas other authors may put in a character to add exposition, that's not what's happening here. Each protagonist or antagonist is very well fleshed out and definitely adds their own spin to the story to progress it along further. In conclusion, I really do recommend this series if you're looking for something new. It's long, but it's definitely not the longest one out there. It may start a little slow for some people, and that's completely understandable. It happened to me, but I'll say what every other booktuber says, you gotta just keep reading. And if you make it past the first book, I do think that y'all will be invested. It's not one of those series where, you have to read till book 5 to really fall into it. So if it doesn't speak to you after the first book, that's fine. Feel free to put it down and try something new out. As of right now, we're going to head on over to the deep dive for those of you who have read the series, and we're going to be jumping into the spoilers. Be sure to keep reading. When it comes down to it, I gotta say, Will Wright really concluded this thing beautifully. He made sure that Lindon, Mercy, Yaren, Zeals, all their character arcs were very well fleshed out at the end, and they all got to go on their own hero's journey and complete their own quests, whether they were given to them by the Abaddon or just internally given to themselves. My favorite part about this series would have to be Lindon and the gang's fight against the Dread Gods and the Monarchs, but also the Abaddon's internal crisis that they're having against the Mad King. 90% of the books are focused on Cradle, but that 10% definitely adds back to the story and the plot as a whole, letting us know that even after they may ascend to the higher realms past Cradle, that at the end of the day, the fight's not over, and they still have to clean up the mess around the universe. I know I'm not the only one whose favorite character was Athan, aka Asriel, and I think Will Wright is completely aware of that given the bloopers at the end of the last book. But I really do appreciate how his new recruits of ascended youngsters are going around not destroying worlds, but also saving them, and they're doing it in their own ways. When it comes down to the factions involved in this book, I really do think that Will Wright put a lot of forethought into it. Having all the Monarchs band together to keep Lindon from defeating the Dread Gods was a touch of poetic beauty. How they were backing these young people at the Uncrowned King tournament, and then a few books later them realizing that, oh, they're not just, young people to make political moves over. These are actual antagonists to their own cause. And it was very beautiful. Basically, it got flipped around on the Monarchs. Speaking on the Abaddon, it makes more sense to me now that I've finished the series of how power can corrupt, specifically ultimate power. You have this space police basically making the rules for the rest of the cosmos, and their own search for greed or their own vendettas against each other have really corrupted the organization. And as we saw, Asriel, otherwise known as Athan, just got fed up with it. They weren't listening to his ideas because they're old blood, and he was the youngster coming in to shake up the organization. So he just said, heck, I'm done with it. And I loved that. Will Wright was thinking about this all the way from book one, which is evident, and that's what you really want an author to do, is to be able to hide conflicts early on in the text so it's well built out by the time you actually get there, opposed to just throwing a new problem or occurrence in each book for them to face. If it's not fleshed out as the story progresses, it's just going to be like a bucket of cold water, and I'm sure we as readers do not want that. When it comes to themes, I would love y'all to jump in the comments and talk about some of the ones that you saw. Really, the one that stuck out to me the most was friendship at the end of the day, but I want to see if there's something more tangible, or just tell me what you thought about the series in general. I'd love to speak with y'all about that. In conclusion, I think we all can agree that this is definitely a very well-written series. I know Will Wright is happy to put it behind him. He didn't rush the job, and that's what I can appreciate about the situation. And I hope that y'all do the same as what I'm doing right now and recommend it to as many people as you can. With that, I appreciate everyone's time. Be sure to check out my next video, which is going to be specifically on Waybound, the last book in the series. I hope y'all have an amazing rest of your week, and be sure to keep reading.